The following program is captioned for the hearing impaired.
WGBH TV Boston presents Crockett's Victory Garden.
Welcome to Crockett's Victory Garden. I'm Jim Crockett. The first thing I want to show you today is this fiddle-leaf philodendron, which was brought in a couple of months ago. It's a plant about 3 feet tall with 5 or 6 leaves on the top of it and just straggly crooked stem beneath. Well, I cut that stem off and set the plant in a pot, and you see it rooted right away. It's made 5 or 6 inches of new growth already. Then we took what few leaves there were left with just a little piece of stem, as you see here, and see the new roots that are growing on the bottom of that. A new shoot coming out here where the stem and the leaf joins. This plant, although small now, will become equally as pretty as the taller one, and maybe even more so because I think it will end up as a better shaped plant. Well, today we're going to show you some interesting things, I hope. One is going to be sowing seeds, because this already is the time of the year that you should be sowing some of your plant seeds. Then we're going to show how to propagate African violets, and in my plant clinic I have an overgrown echeveria. Well, I want to begin here by showing you a very common annual known as the marigold. You don't often think of the marigold as a house plant, but it makes a very good one for a sunny windowsill. This little fellow was planted as a seed about 6 weeks ago. When it got 3 inches tall, I pinched the tip off it. Otherwise, I would have a single flower and a single stem. Now there are 5 or 6 stems, 2 buds all ready to open, 2 flowers already open. A plant such as this will blossom until next summer, right on a good sunny windowsill. Another plant that I've spoken about a number of times recently is the amaryllis. And I thought you'd like to see this one today. This is a sort of an apple blossom color, a combination of pink and white. While we're looking at them, let's look at this plant that has no growth on it at all. This bulb and this other one was planted at the same time. A friend planted this one at home and apparently didn't give it enough water to get it started. He brought it in here about a week ago. We gave it a good drink of water, and now can't tug it out of the soil. It means that the roots have started, and it will grow from here. But there is no way of knowing just how an amaryllis is going to grow. For example, here's another bulb that was planted at exactly the same time. It's made its flowers, and then we cut the stalk off after the flowers faded. Now it's made these handsome leaves. And these are the leaves which have to be kept growing this winter and next spring and next summer. And next fall, you allow the leaves to die down, let the bulb rest a while, and then start it into growth again. But those leaves are the key to blossoms another year. Again, look at this crazy amaryllis. 2 flower stalks. One has come and gone, but not a leaf in sight. And when I say that an amaryllis has its own idiosyncrasies, that's just exactly what I mean. It's very, very difficult to be, I wouldn't want to bet when you could have an amaryllis come into blossom. Another plant which we've been following along here for some time is the coffee seeds. And here you see the coffee seeds beginning to come out of the ground like 2 little white hairpins. Those will be out shortly. Coffee likes a good warm temperature. 75 to 80 degrees is just fine as far as coffee is concerned. Then if you notice these plants flopping over, this is the freesia, a bulb from South Africa whose blossoms are exceedingly fragrant and also heavy, and the stems themselves are weak. So this plant has reached the stage where it needs some stakes around it and some strings to hold them up like that, and then they'll blossom along in the middle of the winter. Very, very handsome and sweet-smelling plants. Now, I have something here that I know you would be surprised at, and that is this thing which looks like something has decayed. It is actually a fungus, the fungus mycelium, or analogous to roots of a plant, of the mushroom, which was planted about 3 weeks ago, making fine growth, as ugly as it looks right now. The mushrooms themselves will sprout out of that in another couple of weeks and will continue to come for several months. Well, let's talk about geraniums here for a moment. And the first geranium that I want to speak about is this little fellow, which we're going to grow up as a standard. I'm going to let this plant grow about 30 inches tall, right up to the top of this stake, then pinch the top out of it. Well, since I want all of the energy to go on only this main stalk, which you see here, I've got to get rid of those side stalks, which are starting to come. And here you can see them coming off from the side. We just cut those things right away from the plant. Every one of them has to come off now. And that way we will concentrate the energy on the main stalk. Now you notice that I cut the stem away, but I did not take off the leaves, because these, again, are the manufacturing organs of the plant. Those are the ones which will help this plant to grow tall. Speaking of geraniums, I have a couple of others that you should look at. If you remember, last summer I said, I really don't advise saving old geranium plants. I much prefer to take cuttings of them along in August and September, root them, and have fine, healthy young plants to carry over through the winter. Well, now here are two plants, one of which has been pinched and one has not been pinched. And when I say pinched, I mean that the top of the stem has not been taken out. One with a single blossom and a single stem, one little added one trying to grow here. Now, if I want to make this plant have a number of stems, first of all, I want to sacrifice this old flower. That's no good at all. Take the tip out of this one, just snap it out, just like that. All right, now we have a great number of leaves, 5 or 6 leaves. Each of those leaf junctures could result in a new stem. Now here's, for example, is one that was treated properly. I see a stem there, another one here, 2 others over here. Already this plant has 4 stems. Remember what I've said on geraniums, the most flowers that can be born on a single stem at one time is a single cluster. With 4 stems, we get 4 flowers, clusters at a time. I'll pinch these again when they get another 3 or 4 inches tall, and we'll have a dozen stems on this plant by next spring. While we're right here, I should mention that we've been growing some sweet peas. They're back out of camera range, but this beautiful thing, and just absolutely fragrant. Well, we're going to show you how to plant those in the garden in the spring too. So I hope that you will enjoy some sweet peas in your garden. 4 months ago, I planted seed of this little primrose known as the fairy primrose. Been growing along rather nicely, and down at the bottom of the pot, you can see the roots are coming right straight through it already, which is a sign that this needs to be repotted. I like to move a plant up to a pot just one size larger, and this is the way to do it. Pull the leaves back with your hand out of the way, give it a sharp crack on a bench, and out comes a beautiful root ball, just like that, absolutely perfect. But this has to be moved up now, otherwise the plant would start to become stunted. I'm going to use just ordinary Jiffy mix, set the plant in. It's a little bit too deep. One of the secrets on planting a primrose is this. Don't plant them even a fraction of an inch deeper than what they grew previously. Now, here we go. Just firm the soil down, allow about a ½ inch space for watering, but the crown of the plant, that's this section right down here, should be no deeper than what it grew previously. Well, that's how we're going to treat the primrose. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is propagating African violets. And I know that you've heard all kinds of stories about African violets and how difficult it is to grow them. And I want to say that I personally don't know of a house plant, which is easier to grow than an African violet. I brought this little plant in from my home this morning. It has blossomed on a windowsill in my home for nearly 4 years. Plant seems to be doing very well still. A lot of blossoms on it, healthy dark green foliage. But if you look here on the side of the plant, right down there, you'll see that little fellow's starting to form a stalk on it as though it were a kind of a miniature palm tree. Well, that means that it's time that this plant should be rejuvenated, and the way I like to do that is to start some young ones from it. All right, all that you do in starting a young plant is to take a leaf which is neither old nor very young, a good healthy leaf of medium growth. You can use a knife, or you can even, sometimes they'll just snap off on the inside. Just take off a leaf like that. And this is the beginning of a new African violet plant, or in some instances, several African violets. All I'm going to use is some sand, plain, ordinary, coarse builder's sand. I'm putting a little hole in it, if you notice, on an angle, and set the leaf in about a ½ inch deep on an angle. That's contrary to what most plants, which is planted straight up. But now let me show you what happens if an African violet leaf is planted in this way. I brought in a couple of plants that I got my mother to give me the other day. It's some that she started about 3 months ago from leaves, just as you see this. Here's one just beginning to grow from the old mature leaf. And then here's one which is much farther advanced, has reached the point where it should be potted into its own pot. Here, again, the secret is to get the leaves out of your way with one hand and tap them off. I'm going to break away the old soil around this and show you just what we have here. Because often, instead of a single leaf, a single plant from a leaf, there are several plants growing in there together. And I believe this to be the case right here. I'm going to, maybe I can take my knife and cut through here a little bit to show you what we have. Okay, there's one plant. You see, there's a healthy little fellow. Oh, that's ready to go into its own pot now. Here, it looks as though there will be 2 others from that. There we have 3 plants from that one leaf in about 3 months' time. All right, again, all I'm going to do with these is to use a little Jiffy mix. I like this pretty good soil for many purposes, made of vermiculite and peat moss and little nutrients. Hold the little plant by the leaf like that. Set it in just at the same depth that it grew previously. Isn't that easy? Now there's a young African violet ready to grow. And here's one I brought from my own home. It was in this stage about 3 weeks ago. Here you see how it has grown in 3 weeks. It has flower buds coming on it, and pretty soon it'll be in full bloom. I'll push some of these out of the way for the moment. And I want to talk about sowing some seeds. First thing I should say about sowing seeds is this. All seeds do not germinate in the same length of time. Coleus seed will be out of the ground in 4 or 5 days, and impatient may take a month. And it's therefore some of the slow starters, the slow germinators, and also the ones which are very tiny and take a long time to grow, need to be planted in midwinter. And I'm going to start off with something like a petunia. This is especially true on planting the double-flowered petunia. You know, of course, what a petunia blossom looks like. And I'm going to show you, first of all, what the ordinary petunia seeds look like. Very, very, very tiny. You see what they look like. This, just almost like dust. Now, if you're going to plant petunias of this type, sift them on top of the surface of the soil like that, and forget them. Just press them down if you want to. Set this container in one of water, and let the moisture come up from underneath. Put this inside of a plastic bag so it is its own greenhouse, and then it will grow from there. But while I'm doing that one, let me show you another way that you can grow petunias. And this is from what is known as pelleted seeds or coated seeds. Those look like little BBs, you might say. Very easy to handle compared with the others, and you can sprinkle them around and space them as you want to. And all you do is push them into the soil just barely press them in, put a label on like that, give them the drink of water that I spoke of, and a little plastic tent, and off they grow. Another very slow starting plant is a geranium, which you can grow from seeds. Get every color, but they take 7 or 8 months from the time of sowing the seeds until they blossom for the first time. Therefore, you see, if you want them to blossom in July, you really have to start them in January or thereabouts. The seed of the geranium is very hard. 2 ways of handling that. One is to soak it overnight in water, and the second way is to rub the seeds on a piece of sandpaper, and that will roughen up the coat a little bit. Then you sow them on the surface of the soil. Now, I have a few here that I've soaked in water for a while, and see if I can rescue a couple of these. Remember that these plants are going to grow quite rapidly now that they've been wet well. Again, we'll cover those with about 1/4 inch of soil. They'll grow very quickly, and you'll have a great variety if you get one of the mixed packages. You get reds and pinks and whites and doubles sometimes and single ones. And of all the plants which has come along fast in popularity lately has been the impatiens, sometimes called Patient Lucy or Busy Lizzie. The seeds of the impatiens look like that. Rather small. Now, as I said before, these may take a month to come out of the ground. A long, long time to wait. Just barely cover seeds of this nature, not over 1/8 inch thick, and just use a little bit of soil on them, smooth it out, let them down. Now, this type of thing goes in a plastic bag. Put that in a place where it gets bright light but not full sun until they sprout, and of course, then take the bag off. On the impatiens, you keep them out of the full sun anyway. Keep them in a brightly lighted place, and they will have. You'll get. Of course, you get for a 50-cent package of seed, you might get 100 plants, which is a pretty darn good return for your money. Another thing which we should plant at this time of year is the shamrock. Now, the shamrock, even in Ireland, there's 2 or 3 different plants are called a shamrock. The one which is most popular, we know in this country, 11 months of the year at least, is white clover. And this is what it looks like. White clover seeds, the kind of thing which you might plant in your lawn if you like clover mixed with your lawn grass. On shamrock seeds, just sow a few of them on the surface of the pot like that. Cover them again with about 1/4 inch of soil perhaps, and set them aside. Now, I should say this. There has been a question come up to me sometimes. Why in the world don't you just plant a single seed in a pot and get it over with, and you don't go through this whole process of transplanting? Let me say that the biggest hazard of growing a plant at all in the home is overwatering. If you have a tiny plant in a big pot, you're apt to overwater it and lose it. And this, by the way, you can get a number of plants in the same area on your windowsill. Now I want to go to another kind of a plant known as the red-margined dracaena. Very popular foliage plant. Comes from Malagasy. Ordinarily grows straight up in the air like this. Sometimes, if a plant gets tipped over by the wind or such, the stem gets crooked. And some people say, no, a plant with a crooked stem has character. Well, how do you give character to a plant like that? Well, I'll show you how. Let's take this, knock that thing right out of the pot. There we are. Just look at that root system. A little soil down in the bottom here. And you notice they're not setting it straight up. Tip it over on its side like that. Now, all of these plants grow toward the sun. So out here at the end of this stem, it will suddenly crook and grow up. And then you'll have one with a crooked stem and, as you say, a lot of character. Now, the other thing is, supposing you'd like this plant to have an extra stem on it, and maybe you get a straight one coming right here from the base. Well, in order to do that, you simply cut a little notch right down like that in the stem. Won't hurt the plant a bit, but below the notch, be willing to bet within 5 or 6 months, another stem will come and come right up out of it from there. So that's how you can make a crooked, red-margined dracaena. Now I want to get to seed testing. And seed testing is an interesting subject to me because I'm a Yankee. I like to save money. I don't see any reason why, if I spend 75 cents for a package of seeds, and there are a lot of them left over from the last year, that I don't at least test the seeds to see if they're still good. Many of them will last for several years, and the way to test them is this. First of all, put the seeds in water overnight, tepid water, and let them soak up as much moisture as can be, and then lay them out on a piece of paper toweling, which you keep damp, and put it in a warm, dark place. These seeds are cucumbers. The seeds are 4 years old. And I want you to just notice all of these nice little roots coming out of here. There's nothing the matter with seeds like that. I'd be very happy to have that kind of germination, even from fresh seeds. Well, I know that that variety is worth saving. Here is buttercup squash, 3 years old. Well, here again, you got shoots coming out of it. Now, everything that we tested didn't come out right. You know, well, it came out as it really was. Some lived and sprouted, and some didn't. But here's Burpee's hybrid cantaloupe, 4 years old. Great new shoots on them, just like that. Handsome plants that you could get from that. And there's no sense in buying more seeds, but you'd have to test them to see if they're really going to work. I certainly wouldn't wait until April to plant them and then find they didn't sprout. Peas, 2 years old. Great sprouts. Radishes, 3 years old, growing. Here are tomatoes, 3 years old, doing beautifully. All right, now I come to that section of the program called the Plant Clinic. And I have a great big echeveria, which is a plant from Mexico, a succulent, not a cactus, mind you, but a plant of the desert. And if you look at this side of the plant, it really looks pretty good, you know, nice, lovely, handsome foliage. But that's the part that was looking toward the window. And this is the part which my friend saw from his desk. The back, the crooked stems, and those hairy old roots. And really the plant is just crying for some kind of attention. And there really isn't much that can be done with this plant as such to repot it. Repotting alone won't make it happy again. But what we can do is this. We can take some of these these stems like this, which look so happy. Take a stem like that. Don't have to do a thing with it, but cut it off. Pick off some of those lower leaves that would be beneath the soil. And you can let this dry a couple of days if you want to, but it isn't necessary, providing you don't overwater it once you've planted it. Stick it in a pot like that. And now you have a young echeveria, just as easily as that. Just one nice plant. And from this, as you can see, we easily could get a dozen or more plants. And then the other thing is this. Each of the leaves of the echeveria, just like that, are potential plants. And let me show you again how we would do that. A little pot with sand. Just poke a little hole for it like that. Again, set the echeveria leaf, this leaf cutting, on an angle like that, about 1/4 of an inch into the sand. Don't keep it too wet. In about a month's time, there will be little tiny echeverias growing all the way over it, and you can have hundreds and hundreds of plants from the same one. Well, now, I'd like to ask you, if you have any questions on gardening, to send them to Crockett's Victory Garden, WGBH, Boston, 02134. And I have a few questions I'd like to get to today. First one is from Francis Cook, who said, "Dear Mr. Crockett, the kittens remove the labels from my many pots and flats of freesia, acidanthera, and laperusia." Those are some names, aren't they? "How can I identify them? The sword-shaped leaves are so similar, with a rib on back and front. One started with purplish leaves. Is that acidanthera? I know I'll find out eventually, but I'd like to know now. Well, I would say, Mrs. Cook, that you start by looking at the thickness of those leaves coming out of the ground. The thinnest ones would be the laperusia, the middle one are the freesia, the broader ones broadest ones are the acidanthera. Bob Newcomers would like to know about starting banana trees. Dear Jim, we've started apples, oranges, avocados, and Chinese dogwoods, but never have been able to start a banana tree. Well, now you can buy seeds of an ornamental banana that will grow very, very rapidly. Try the George Park Seed Company in Greenwood, South Carolina. I'm sure that they have those seeds grow very, very fast. Now, edible bananas are sterile. Those little brown specks you see in the flesh of a ripe banana are vestigial seeds, and you cannot get plants from them. They will not grow. Here's an interesting one. Came in with a couple of pictures from Alfred Saddleberger, who said last year and again this year, a variety of squash I did not plant has come up by itself. I've never seen this variety before, and it doesn't wander, and it says it looks something like a butternut, and the foliage does, 9.5 inches long. The meat is stringy and bland. Have you any idea of what this is? Is it a special variety, or is it a variety due to cross-pollination? Well, this is what it looks like. This little fellow right here, 9.5 inches long, rather a nice-looking fruit, but not good to eat. This one, it looks to me as though maybe a bee carried some pollen from one of your neighbor's squash plants, maybe a type known as the vegetable spaghetti, if it's a stringy, is what you say. That's why I say that on squashes particularly, don't try to save your own seed. Buy seeds from a grower who knows that they're going to give you what you plant. Long time spent in growing them, and very small amount for the seeds that you have to buy. Mrs. Sybil Benson wants to know about a Concord grapevine. This plant usually had grapes. This year, no grapes at all. I don't wonder, because the vines have almost no place to climb except into a tree. So most of it is tangled and on the ground. Should we cut it back to the roots and give it something to grow on, or just prune it a little? Well, first of all, your grapevine has something, really two strikes against it. First, it's never been pruned, and then it's growing in the shade. You have to have sunshine and prune a grapevine back radically each year. Now, my tip for today has to do with all kinds of houseplants, and has to do with cold water. Now, you know how you would feel with a cold shower at 40 degrees temperature or 35-degree temperature. That's what you give your houseplants when you give them water straight from the tap. Warm that water up to where it feels good and warm to your hand. 90 degrees is about right. You'll find that those green thumb friends of yours use warm water on their houseplants. One more tip from Crockett's Victory Garden. Hope you enjoy the program every week.
Funds for captioning this program were provided by the Bureau of Education for the Handicapped, USOE.